All right, we're recording.
Developers are doing that nowadays.
Okay. So, I know I said I'd have your tests ready, but I don't. I'm sorry. I tried. I really did. I'm like halfway through marking the last question. I apologize. It's been quite the week. Quite a couple of weeks. So, I apologize. We'll do that next week. We'll do the test review and everything. So,
Are we able to figure out the action?
yes, yeah, we got that. I looked that up. So let's finish off that whole thing, that example from last time. If we, I just need to get XAMPP loaded, so we'll just do that. Apache, MySQL. There we go. Good. Let's just check out to make sure that MySQL is configured correctly. It's not. Let's do that quickly. Credentials. Number of columns 3. Create table. Go. ID, integer, auto increment from primary ID, username, varchar, give it size 64, and password, let's give it varchar size 255. There we go, save, bing bang boom, wonderful. Now, accessing localhost.
Sorry, what were the values of the table?
Oh,
ID,
username and password.
Password.
And then I just made the ID an auto-incrementing primary key. I didn't worry about making the username unique in this case. Those are just varchars. The username is of size 64 and the password is of size 255. Sound good? So far so good? Wonderful. So, there we go. Oh, did we launch? We did launch. Okay. Good. Let's open a folder. XAMPP. htdocs. Login security. This is the exact code from last time. So, we should be able to access. I think I put it in login security. Let's see, yeah, it's in I double folded it. Oh well. So let's just put a couple of entries in our database. Or actually, let's take a look at the code first. So, returning to our registration code. So, oh, that's so super tiny. Here, undo. So, if we recall last time, we talked quite a lot about hashing. And this was the critical line that we inserted into our code. In order to store a hashed password in our database, we must call the password hash function on the string that we are putting in, and then we select the mode that we wish to hash it with. Default is good enough for our purposes, right? So, this computes a new hash with randomized salt every time. My information from last class was a little bit old and incorrect. It does not, PHP is not keeping a database of stored salts. It's doing something a little bit different. So what it's doing is it's actually storing the salt inside of the hash value that's being returned instead. So, right now we are, there we go. Let's register a new user.
Sorry, you say PHP does not keep a database of the salt?
Correct. It stores it in the hash value itself. I'll show you I'll show you how this works. So, username, there we go. So, in our computed hash value, this stuff at the front is metadata relating to the count value that the password was hashed with. The default value is 10, so that's where the 10 comes from. After that, you have the randomized string, but a certain portion of this randomized string is the salt. So up to around there, right? This value can change how many salt characters you're using, right? This is meant to be transparent. Transparent is a word that PHP is using to mean this should not matter if you're using the functions correctly. If PHP changes how many characters it uses in its salt later on, if you're using the functions correctly, it won't change how you have to write your program. You shouldn't have to go back and change previous programs you've written. So, a certain amount of this string of characters is the salt. This salt can be used to recompute the hash value exactly, but it means that we cannot simply rehash the password and send it to the database. It's going to use a different salt. So, to use a hashed password out of a database, we must retrieve that password from the database, read it in PHP, and then check it against the password that we have that we've received using the host parameter, right? Received from the client. So let's take a look here. So on the registration.php file, nothing changes. This is being done correctly. For the login check, on the other hand, what we need to do is we need to use our database to extract the actual password from it. Now, when we did our previous database example, we didn't actually read the contents of entries which have been returned back to us, right? All we did was count the number of them. So we're going to have to change things. First, it used to be that we selected all from credentials where username was equal to user and password was equal to password. That was our, our initial version of this. The password that we have received from the client cannot be matched to anything in the database because we don't know what the randomized salt is. The salt is in the database, right? We need to retrieve the salt from the database at the same time as retrieving the hashed value, right? So, basically, this means that rather than checking both the username and password in SQL, we are now only checking the username so that we retrieve the associated password. The actual password check is no longer happening on the SQL server, right? Because essentially that's where we had located the check previously. We had sent, give me all of the database records that match this username and this password, and if I get exactly one, then there was one entry, and therefore we can validate the session, right? But now, we are simply retrieving the password so that it can be checked by PHP rather than checked in SQL. Does that make sense? Okay, where did you guys lose me?
The reserve word.
The which word?
Reserve word. Like the last one, can you repeat it again?
Okay. So I will illustrate with a diagram. So we have the client, right? We have the server, and we have the database. If I'm not using a hashed password, we have username, so this is no hash.
The string's caught.
That'll do it. How on earth? All right, there we go. So, this is with no hashing, right? With no hashing, we get username and password entered into the client and sent to the server, right? The server basically just takes that username and password, which it receives, and bounces that back to the database directly, right? The database returns all entries where the username matches this one and the password matches this one. So you get, typically, if the usernames are unique, you'll get 1 or 0 rows returned to the server, right? If 1 row, success, else failure. Make sense? Okay. Now, with hashing, this is how it works. Once again, we have client, server, and database. Right? The request starts off the same way. A username and password are entered into the client and sent to the server. So that's step one. So, step two. So this is login, not registration with hashing. On the server, let's assume that these login credentials are correct. Or, let's just say that, let's assume that this user has been registered in the database, right? So we'll have information, user, and password. These are associated in the database, right? So, except that's not actually a password, that will be the hash. Right? So, now we have our user name and our password, which are on the server. Just the username is used to access the database and retrieve the hash. In actual fact, it depends on how you formulate your query. You could receive just the hash back. You could receive the username hash pair. It depends on how you do the select query. Question?
So it's just, as you mentioned, it is just retrieving the hash, so the password stays.
Correct. So, the hash is then retrieved onto the server, right? The hash contains the salt, right? The salt basically this is taken to make the salted pass word, right? That is then hashed to make the input, or the client's hash, I guess we could call it, right? The client's hash is then compared to the hash retrieved from the database, right? Call it database hash. And that's the operation. So it's a bit more complicated than the first go around.
Okay, so when the database retrieves the hash with the salt, it sends it back to the server, and the server checks what it calls with the client side's, I guess the client side's hash too?
So the client's hash must be computed from the salted password that's retrieved here. But from our perspective, as users of PHP, everything below this line, right, is a function. It is the let's see here. Password verify function. So password underscore verify takes two arguments. The first is the password that we are receiving from the client. So this guy goes here. And the second argument is the hash, which has been retrieved from the database, which includes the salt. You don't have to pick the salt out manually.
When you put the hash, it's salt is there by
Yes.
default.
This is how PHP generates these hash values. Again, if we
So the password verify function takes the password and the hash or the salt.
it takes the combination of the hash and the salt. It takes just that raw data that was stored in the database. Yeah. It just takes simply that string which was generated by password hash. Does that make sense? The light is really bad.
Yeah.
I'm gonna close that. That's the wrong one. Better?
Yes.
Oh, considerably. Yeah. This isn't too dark, is it?
This is fine.
Okay.
Is it a constant red glow?
If you play this music,
It looks new.
it's simple.
So we need to use the password verify function in order to verify the retrieved password. We are now sending this correctly. So, there we go. Basically, all of this has to go. So, let us consult our modules on how to retrieve data from a database query. So,
Fetch by associated.
yes. So, we are looking for the fetch method. We want to fetch, and then we can choose what mode we want to fetch in. If we use fetch assoc, that is fetching the data as an associative array. How much are we fetching with the fetch method? Anybody know?
So if we're using only fetch, we're just fetching the first line, like only one.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're using fetch all, we're getting everything from the data.
Yes. So repeated calls to fetch will fetch each of the rows of output sequentially. Right? So if I wanted, like if I am getting multiple database entries returned, I can fetch I can basically write a loop to fetch each one individually using a single fetch, or I can use fetch all to get all of the data all at once, and then I can deal with it from there, however you like. That is, it functions very similarly to the difference between read, fread for file I/O, and fgetS, right? Using fgetS, you have, you only read one line at a time, right? With fetch, you're only reading one entry at a time. So, let's fetch. So, now, it's also important to know what we have a reference to here, right? The thing we're fetching from is the same thing we called execute with, right? We are not calling fetch on the return result of execute. That just indicates whether or not the operation succeeded or failed. It does not indicate how many rows were returned. So for example, the execute function would fail if the database couldn't be connected to, or if your SQL query was not well formed, right? If there was a syntax error in it, the SQL database would be like, this isn't a correctly formatted query, what the frig is the matter with you? Kick you back an error message. So let's fetch. Our statement, arrow fetch. There we go. And then PDO colon fetch associative. What's the colon operator again?
Is it like parent?
Is it like what?
Is it like getting like inheritance, like you're getting a parent object or something?
That's single colon, kind of, in some languages, like C#. Actually, PHP uses the extends keyword the same way as Java does. No, this is the scope resolution operator. So, fetch assoc is a enumeration or other constant, I'm not sure how they're declaring it, which is stored within the PDO namespace. This is a way of basically making it so that constants are bound to a domain rather than just like being everywhere and it being a free-for-all. So yeah, PDO assoc. Just to prove that this works, and I absolutely do not recommend doing this in real life, let us, well first let's, let's echo it. JSON encode result. So, going back, here we go. If we take a look at our PHP my thingy, you can see that we have a correct entry for Mr. Krabs. So, let's run this. Let's run this bad boy. Retrieve Mr. Krabs 123. Password is. So there you go. So the result which has been fetched from the database is an associative array. We get the ID number, the username, and the password. Again, this password contains the salt. So we have to use like that bad boy is the thing that we have to put into password verify. So then, if password verify, our incoming password is P in this case. That's the password from the client. And we're looking for the hash of the password stored in the database. This will be in result at password. Echo login succeeded. Else echo log in failed.
So the password in this case is that be the P now, that's just your regular password that you required.
Yeah, that's coming through the client. Yeah. Up here, we're grabbing it from the form data on the HTML page.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the results password, that's the combination of hash and salt.
Yes, that's the combination of the hash and the salt. PHP intends to do this in such a way that like you never have to worry about the salt or even think about the salt being there, right? It's trying to do it without you even knowing that there is salt, right?
Okay.
But if you don't know that there's salt in there, and if you aren't like, if you're the type of person who likes to take things apart and like see how they work, right? You might be inclined to be like, oh well, password verify, all that's doing is like equality comparison. I can do that without calling a function, right? It's doing more than that, right? So if you're the type of person who likes to do those sorts of like small basic operations yourself without calling a function for it, things are more complicated in the back end actually, and just calling the function is a much better idea. That's recording, right?
Has red on it.
Got the
Has
red
it
light.
got the red circle?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, good. Wonderful. I discovered recently that it is actually possible to upload a YouTube video from a shell script. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity when I don't have any tests to mark or assignments to grade that I can write a bash script to completely automate my video uploads. Just like Willy Wonka, I want my videos to be not to be touched by human hands. And not because that improves the quality, because it's less work. Yes?
Sarah Wonka used tiny people.
What?
What?
Who? What?
The idea of not touched by human hands. Sarah
Yeah.
Wonka used the
Yeah.
balloon, but you're using a bag.
I mean-
I think
Yeah.
I don't think the comparison.
What are Oompa Loompas but the bash scripts of the Willy Wonka's chocolate factory?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one you like, the older version or the newer version?
Of what?
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, the older version, obviously.
Yeah, Willy
Yeah.
I like
Wonka's
the
a
older
better
one.
one.
Gene Wilder is an actual actor, and Johnny Depp, I can't, like, every time I see him in anything, I just, like,
He was good in Pirates.
That's the only movie.
yeah, but only because, like, he's got this kind of, like, general, like, removal from everything that he's in, and that happens to work in that scenario, you know? He always seems out of place, but I for once actually played an out-of-place character.
He's
Yeah.
the only reason that any Pirates movie after the third one is like has like any reason to watch them.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know One Piece?
I don't know, I just,
Pirates 4 and 5. Pirates of
Yes.
the Caribbean.
No, you know One Piece?
Anyway,
No.
So it's salt is basically modifying the password.
anyway, I'm allowed to not care for it.
So it's like more secure.
So,
While it's
So let's actually run this and see if it works. Log in. Aha! Our login succeeded. Hmm?
Are we getting some sort of error? It's in my register saying that parameters must be an array or an object that implements a principal. It's in
That implements what?
it's right here, so parameters must be an array or an object that implements a principal in this register.
Oh, you might be getting like false. You did you enter a username?
No. Well, I tried to create one.
Oh. Yeah. Double check your HTML to make sure that the name is the name of the user Huh.
I'll take a look at modifying.
So. Good. So our login works. Wonderful. So let's now talk about the let's talk about how to get you guys up on CS Unix with this stuff. So we will obviously need WinSCP, but in fact, PuTTY will be more to the point. So I don't know. WinSCP. We'll see if it works soon. So once again, you're going to be using the myphpAdmin in order to view your database contents. So you can access that relatively easily. CS unix.mohawkcollege.ca/phpMyAdmin. There we go. So phpMyAdmin here requires login information. Now, this login information is different from your CS Unix login information. Your username is the same, but the password will be different. The default password should be SA underscore followed by your date of birth, I think year, month, day. But once we take a look, we will actually see this for certain. Because each one of your student accounts has a text file that's been left in it in the home directory that contains your actual myPHP administration password. Question?
Sorry, is that underscore you wrote? Or is that-
It is an underscore.
And that's capital S or is it?
That is a capital S.
Okay.
Your regular CS Unix username. But let me show you how to get at your password file. More. So, in your home directory, which is the one that contains your public HTML file, you can see that there isn't really anything in there.
Make sure it's capital S.
But, oh, did anybody actually get in? Yeah?
Capital S.
No? Okay, good. Well, not good, but
That's fine. Underscore. Year. So like 2004.
So basically, the problem with doing this through WinSCP is that hidden files don't show up. And it's been stored in a hidden file. Hopefully so that you don't delete it accidentally.
Wait.
Is it the MySQL password?
So, tsunix.mohawkcollege.ca. This is using PuTTY. I know you all hate PuTTY, but I don't care. Nope, don't care. I don't care that people don't like PuTTY.
So the PHP folder is empty.
Yes, it's not located in the PHP folder.
So do you want us to go to public now?
Yeah, your home directory. So,
Okay, I'm in right now.
so in your home directory, which should just be your username / with no subdirectories, if you type in PuTTY
I'm not.
ls-a, where A stands for all, you can see that there's actually quite a lot in that folder that doesn't appear to be there on first casual inspection. Most particularly, mysql password.txt. So, question?
It just contains the
that's a good
username,
list.
not the password.
Yeah. It might be the other way around.
Honestly, are we supposed to replicate what you're doing right now, or? Because I'm on the WinZip folder page. Like,
WinZip?
yeah, WinZip. I'm on like right here.
Oh.
Am I supposed to do what you're doing?
In PuTTY, I recommend it.
Oh, like doing what you're doing, okay.
Yeah,
I don't
because
know.
this you can see hidden files and folders easily.
Like, I don't know how you got there.
So you
Oh, I just logged in with PuTTY.
Okay.
Oh, you just logged in.
Yeah, literally, I just logged in with PuTTY, and then I ran the following command. I will put it on the board.
So what's the?
It's ls-a view all files, including,
I don't think I have PuTTY.
you should get it. Didn't I?
Never used PuTTY.
You had to have used PuTTY to set your password for CS Unix.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was just once.
Huh?
That was just
What's
once.
the
I don't
host name?
remember how I did it on Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, if it's Apple, it's easy, you can just use the SSH command. So load up your terminal, type bash, and then SSH, your username at csunix.com, it'll follow the prompts.
Sorry, what's the host name?
That's what happened to
csunix.mohawkcollege.ca. If you don't have PuTTY on your own personal computer, it's definitely on the lab computers.
When you wrote, you said $hidden.
Sir, I just have to open the terminal in Apple, correct?
Yeah.
Like their
Yes.
terminal?
Yeah, Apple's terminal, but like Apple's shell isn't the bash shell and SSH is a bash command. So you have to then type bash to get the bash command, to get the bash interface. And then you can use the SSH command.
It's LS space.
But yeah, you don't need PuTTY because you're not on Windows.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I guess that's one of the pros of having that.
yeah.
That's it.
You'll find them more and more as you go on. But the command once you get there is SSH CS Unix username at
Let's give it a second.
CS Unix dot Mohawk College. You know this, right?
Is the, we use.
MohawkCollege.ca.
Oh, yeah. The rest
And
of
then it'll ask you for your password, give it your password, and then you'll have this command prompt. It will say VMware, your username at CS Unix, and then give you a command prompt, then you are logged in to CS Unix from your terminal.
Okay.
That's all that PuTTY does, is it emulates that.
Alright.
So anyway,
You type it up on the
ls-a views all files in the directory, including hidden ones. Then cat.mysql _ password. The tab autocomplete is pretty good. So yeah, okay, I got it wrong.
There's no such,
It should be
directory or file.
day, month, year.
Password?
Right?
Didn't do it in a second.
Yeah, definitely.
It logged me normally when I did it, the way you said year, month,
Oh,
day,
You got into my PHP
Oh, yeah.
that way?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know.
It'd be funny if it was by sheer accident that you got it.
yeah, maybe. So, mine is a bit different from yours. You will only see your own database. Because I'm an instructor, I see everybody's. Right? So you will see a database corresponding to your own username. Right? Then, from there, you can add your tables, modify your database, delete the contents of your database on CX Unix, the same way that you did anywhere else. Question?
So I was able to log in without opening the PuTTY.
You were able to log, yeah? Okay. Good.
So the host name is it, what SA underscore 812?
No, that's the password that's the default password for PHP MyAdmin. Question?
So, I'm trying to hack this number, but, I what's the password here? In the wrong spot, is that right?
Oh. Oh, it's not hidden.
Just log in. Like, see,
Okay, thanks. In command prompt,
it's your normal. No, it's lowercase s.
you have to have like a
Just CS.
tab autocomplete.
Right, and then your password.
Alright. So, yes? Oh yeah, that's because you've got you swap your username and password. That's your password. That's your username is your CS Unix user. Ah, you got in. ls-a, find the name of it. Oh, it's not hidden for you guys.
It is,
cat. MySQL. Master password.
I did something like that before. It just.
And that's for the PHP admin?
Oh, you wanna? I have the ability to change it the same way that I do for CS Unix passwords. I can modify your PHP myadmin password as well.
But we cannot do it on
Well, there is a script in there, which in theory should work for you to be able to change your own password. I haven't tested the script though, so I don't know. But it might work.
Yeah, maybe I need to change my password, because that's not working for some reason.
Maybe
On my
Shoot me an email.
Yeah, gotcha.
many people changed it and like when they were still starting to use Unix.
Yeah,
As a quick and easy solution to get it.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe that's crazy.
Question?
So wait, when she sweats, is she getting allergic reactions?
Allergic to water?
She doesn't even shower?
So wait, how does she hydrate?
Does she even drink water?
Thank you.
Yeah, so, I don't see what.
Put her in the desert, she's gonna want water.
There it is. Oh, that's your CS Unix username, not that. That's your password. Put that in the password and use your regular username for CS Unix.
No wonder.
Oh, is this for me? Oh, okay. All right. I thought it was like my course evaluation. Am I doing well?
I'm
saying
Good.
Right in front of the camera.
Um,
So this is password when I'm on the last one failed.
That's your regular CS Unix. That's your regular CS Unix login password. Oh, you might do that. Shoot me an email. Okay. So anyway, so that's how you get into my PHP admin on CS Unix. And for the purposes of posterity, I realized that like I did put like my login credentials on a video recording. So rest assured, by the time the video goes out, those credentials will have been changed.
That's a lie.
What? No, actually, that's totally going to be the case.
You could
So,
just cut it out,
I mean,
or blur it,
or just put like a cheeky emoji over it in the video,
yeah.
you know? No, I want to do as little video editing as possible, although that might also be a good idea.
You're
So,
just cutting
There,
it.
sorry, there are people that have softwares that can actually remove those things.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll say just remove it from your, just
Just
crop that.
crop it out,
Yeah, just crop that's what
or like just kill the video, or, I'll figure it out. So anyway, so that's how you get into my PHP admin on CS Unix. Any questions? Okay, good. So once you've got my PHP admin on CS Unix set up with the table that you want, if you used a database name that has the same name as your database name on XAMPP, right? All you have to do is modify one line in your PHP to change it so that you now have your myPHP credentials on CS Unix entered in instead of root and blank password, right? So up here, the database name will stay the same. Your username will be the myPHP admin username that you just entered, which is identical with your CS Unix username. So these two fields should be the same, right? And this field should be the contents of that text file that all of us we all discovered collectively in a very collective fashion, where I told you where to find it and then some of you did. So, any questions? Yes?
So is it the file URL that we will put in the password or just the password? Is it-
It's, so, whatever you typed to access the MyPHP admin page in the password field, exactly that string here.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but is it secure?
Well, in general, I wouldn't necessarily recommend,
Mhm.
there are ways of further protecting your information.
But yeah.
For example, perhaps you store,
Mhm.
you could do a number of things to protect your username and password. You could store them in an external file, right? Read the contents of that file, and keep the contents of that file encrypted, right? Of course, then this file would contain the encryption key. So, all you're doing is moving the data around. You're not necessarily protecting it any better from somebody who knows what they're doing, right? Basically, in order to get that information, right, the contents of the PHP script do not go out. They do not leave the server, right? So, in theory, this should be reasonably secure. A literal string inside of a PHP script should be reasonably secure. Basically, if you lose access to that, you've already lost shell access to your whole directory, right? Somebody with elevated privileges has access to your server account, which, if that's the case, your database is gone too. It doesn't really matter, right? It's game over at that point anyway. But, I understand why would I put my password somewhere so conspicuous, right? That would, if you're worried about maybe you're worried about there are security cameras in the place where you work, and maybe you're worried that the Russians are gonna hack into the security cameras at the place where you work, and they're gonna watch your screen when you scroll by your username and credentials. Russians are gonna get your username and credentials, but
War Thunder's most likely gonna do that.
yeah, it's like if
Or
you
Minecraft.
most people most of the time are not being spied on by Russians.
Yeah,
Most of the time.
other
Yes.
than when,
Americans, that's another story.
well, funny thing is, in War Thunder, they started leaking military documents just to prove a point. And now Minecraft just joined the trend.
Yeah.
Should be totally like.
Okay.
the only
So,
sign-
so let's talk about even further safety concerns. Let's talk about the SQL injection attack. Yeah, nice juicy topic. So, let me just erase the board. All right, the SQL injection attack. SQL injection attacks are basically the best value for money if you're a hacker, or money per unit time type thing. It's an extremely powerful and problematic type of attack. Alright? So, you remember a few years ago, PlayStation lost like 500,000 accounts? Right? You
Yeah,
remember that one?
yeah,
That was an SQL injection attack.
yeah, good thing I wasn't using my PlayStation at all during that time.
Yes.
I didn't care.
Yes. There was a number of years ago. The province of Ontario's healthcare system lost a whole bunch of patient records to an SQL injection attack.
Remember that?
Yes, right? So I think in that case the attackers didn't like delete the data, they just copied the data. Like that would just seem like even a hacker. It's like why would you delete people's medical records, you know? Like grab them, sure, but why you know,
Well, yeah, there is no purpose.
people's lives could be at risk, you know? Yes.
Did any of them get caught or no?
Oh, I don't know. Probably not. It's very difficult to trace these sorts of things. How many hackers get convicted? You know?
Not much.
Not many.
And by the time they are
Well, they
found,
get
they're already
caught.
somewhere else.
Oh, they got
Yeah.
offered to the FBI.
Yeah, exactly. When if you're good enough, then you get to work for CSIS.
That's an issue, you have to be caught to be hired,
I don't see.
Yeah.
Well,
so.
first you have to give them a run for their money first, and then they'll be like, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
You can work for us. Your
Yeah,
criminal record's
so-
so bad.
And by the way, if you don't know what CSIS is, it's basically Canada's version of the Secret Service / FBI / whatever you want to call it.
CIS.
Yeah.
Was Canada copied?
Hmm?
I said, was Canada copied?
Was Canada copied? Like the whole country?
No, I said, must Canada copy the US, or the US have the FBI?
Oh, must we? Oh, no. It's of course it's modeled more on like the British one, right?
Isn't it
Just
just
like the
like-
government is modeled on the British government, not the American government. Not the Americans. So the SQL injection attack then. In principle, what you have is the ability to insert code and other SQL queries into an already existing query that's being sent to a database. So for example, our password lookup query was select star from credentials where username is equal to something.
This is much.
Right? So the way that I showed you how to do this and the splicing in of this data, it's not vulnerable to SQL injection attack. The PDO object is filtering special characters the same way that the sanitizing filters for filter inputs and filter var are sanitizing special characters to prevent XSS attacks, right? The special characters are being removed, so they're safe. Because the SQL injection attack also relies on the programmer being able to insert special programming characters. So, does anybody know what the comment character is in SQL?
It's the
Dash,
three dash lines.
Dash dash. Yeah, so let's say that something is equal to dash dash, has a dash dash in it somewhere, right? This is effectively a command to ignore the rest of the SQL query as written by the original author. So if you had additional checks down here, they would be ignored, right? if you put a semicolon here, that's terminate statement, right? You could say something like, where username is equal to username is equal to gotcha, or 1 is equal to 1. And of course, SQL is one of those maddening languages where equality comparison is done with a single equal sign. Semicolon. Right? What happens if we insert this string right there? How many rows of the table do we get?
One.
Should get everything, I believe.
Anything with some, not something.
Sorry, what's your definition of the something?
Oh, it's just like, it's a variable in PHP.
So it's.
That should be above as well.
Wait, so alternate credentials where username is equal to that. Is that the only command that you're running?
So if there
Yeah.
are 3 things, so say for example, if the 3 things that's, if something is actually there, like the gotcha is actually there to get that, if,
Wait, why is one?
I don't know where.
Why is 1 equal to 1? That's a good question.
That's like it's always gonna be true.
That's correct. Very correct. We're starting to get somewhere. This is always true.
So it's always gonna run the command.
Something or true is always
True.
right.
It's giving back everything.
It's giving back everything. The entire contents of the credentials database.
I was gonna point out that I thought for a second it could be ID 1, but no, it makes
I was gonna
sense.
say, don't take it.
Yeah.
Column values.
You don't name your columns after a number, like just once.
You can, you won't be able to.
So this kind of has to be used in combination with a couple of things. But imagine if we were using our, let's imagine if we were using our previous approach where we were simply counting the number of rows that were returned to determine whether login failed or login succeeded, right? Let's imagine, rather than more restrictively, looking to see if 1 row was returned and succeeding on that check, let's just do what seems like the Boolean opposite, and if 0 rows are returned, then the login fails, right? That means that the login check succeeds so long as any number of rows are returned that's not 0. Which means, if this thing vomits up the entire contents of the credentials table, that tricks the login check into saying, oh yeah, no, I definitely have a non-zero number of matches here. So here's login, here's the login, right? Is this making sense? So let's see how we might go about doing this. By the way, I mentioned this previously in class, but PHP is actually responsible for the existence of the SQL injection attack. And I'll show you why. Let me just, here.
PHP can make it any worse, can it?
I mean, it's got its, yeah, it's, you know, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So, I'm going to substitute this bit where we create we create the command, we set
Oh, is it like the extension?
the value here, right, using args, and we pass that in with execute. I'm going to substitute that with just simple string splicing, right? So let's say, rather than doing things nicely, we say command is equal to select star from credentials where username is equal to you. Right? You might be very, very, very strongly inclined to do something like this. This is the way that we've been doing most things in PHP so far, right? But we are splicing that in without any checking whatsoever. Well, not quite true. We should also disable checking up here. So, there's a couple of layers that we have to go through too. There are a couple of layers that were already protecting us from an SQL injection attack, right? The fact that special characters were being filtered out of usernames, that was helping, right? So we got to remove that in order to see an SQL injection attack happen in real time. So u is equal to post u. Can I make a brief comment about midterms and like the question I'm marking? A lot of people seem to think that you should JSON decode the file handle instead of reading the file contents and decoding that. Just saying.
Well,
Anyway,
what are the midterms gonna be great?
I'm working on them so hard. I'm gonna get them for you next class for DevLoad.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm very sorry. It's taking me a long time. It's actually funny. I measured it.
It's okay.
The last question is taking me as much time to mark as an assignment would.
It's fine. The reason is, I'm assuming it's because you got the marking key late.
Yeah. Also, I was sick last week for a couple of days and that didn't help. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. Take your time,
So
sir.
I guess, to answer your question, I guess like, it could also be the fact that like green and ink are under pressure, so it's just the first thing that comes to your mind. Like you have to decode, you have to use JSON decode, but like, you forget if it's like, are you decoding the file or are you decoding the file as well?
Yeah, I understand people forget things under pressure, but if you think, okay, what do you think having a job is like?
We give more time in a job compared to like 1 hour
I mean,
to do something.
yes and no, right?
It depends, like,
It depends on what kind
so
of
there are some things, okay, I worked in the aviation industry where they give you a task for like, you have to do it, the task says is meant to be done in an hour, but then your supervisor says like, oh, this is something that people do in like less than that, so they expect you to do it for less than
Yes.
an hour. So
Yeah.
I do get what you mean by,
Yeah.
like, it's the same thing, like the pressure is there.
Yeah, it's, yeah, like, I do sympathize that a test is a test, and I understand that, like, people forget things during tests, and that, in the real world, you have the opportunity to correct mistakes when they occur, and you have the ability to debug code and that sort of thing. But, like, to me, if you miss the part where you read the file, if you open the file and close the file without having read the file, that indicates a lack of understanding of the process of file I/O.
Yeah, that's
So, and that's what's being tested for, right? I'm not, like, ostensibly, I'm testing, did you remember this command, did you remember that command? But each command that you miss indicates a lack of understanding of the processes and principles underlying. Because if you understood the process and the principles underlying perfectly, you wouldn't make those types of mistakes, right? The types of mistakes you'd probably make are like, oh, I forgot a closing brace or a semicolon or something, right? Insubstantial syntax errors. The type of stuff that, like, you know, the type of stuff that red underlines in an editor,
Yeah.
right? But anyway, so let's take a look at this very, very unsafe version. We still have to send the thing to the, we still have to send it to the database. So, there we go. Now, no. Okay. Let's see here. I found the error I was making. Sorry, folks. So if you're splicing the username, it was kind of a simple error actually. If you're splicing a string into an SQL query, you gotta have single quotes around the thing you're splicing in. Because otherwise it thinks it's a keyword in SQL, which is why I was getting the error. Sorry about that, folks. So, let's see if we can hack the database. Ooh. All right, let's see. Time to be mad hackers. So, the username is vulnerable to SQL injection attack. Just, normally if you were a hacker you wouldn't get this kind of help, but just for the sake of this, let's echo our command. Because why not? Right? Just so we can see how this changes. So, equals Mr. Krabs, 1, 2, 3, end, single quote to end the string. Comment character, there, right? Let's see if this doesn't cause an issue. There we go. So our login failed, but our string is still correct. Now, let's be slightly more nefarious. Or 1 is equal to 1. What do we got? Login succeeded. Uh-oh.
That's not good.
How about gotcha? Login succeeded.
Oh, shit.
Right? Now this is the username field, obviously, but you can also you can imagine a similar effect on the password. A lot of this kind of stuff relies on people following normal conventions. It's kind of terrible to say, but a lot of hacking depends on common sense. Like the fact that people will generally enter parameters into an SQL query in the order they appear in the form, for example. Like username, then password, right? You want to hit the first field, right? And because you want to block out as much of as much of your target's where clause as possible, right? But we lose. And I'd just like to point out, right? Well, the question, okay. So the only reason this is succeeding right now is because there's only one entry in the database, right? This is accessing every entry in the database. It just so happens that the password we're trying to hash matches the first entry in the database. That's why this login is succeeding, right? But you can see we are succeeding on invalid credentials, which is still bad, right? Because although the correct password has been entered, I could enter gotcha, sucker. Oh. Alright. Yeah. Right, because in our secondary check, we're still hashing the password. So we still need to know the right password, but, this is another reason why doing the password hash version is more secure. Because it also, if the database is vulnerable to SQL injection attacks, right, if they manage to sneak one through, if you're doing the actual login verification in PHP, it makes you less vulnerable, right? But, you know, just to prove that I am actually getting everything. There we go. Add a new user. Patrick. What should Patrick's password be?
Star.
Just his name again.
I was thinking maybe,
Patrick under a rock. Oh, his password, I thought that
No.
I'm for real, I think he would just put his own name.
yeah, there we go.
I'm
Okay.
confident of that.
Patrick. Patrick. There we go. So you can see we have in PHP MyAdmin, this is the localhost one. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. There we have all of our lovely login credentials.
Sir, do you think if Patrick would try type in Patrick without the exclamation marks, and when it says password's too short, he would write down too short?
Maybe. I think that he would probably misspell his own name. So,
We're talking different degrees of Patrick because they made him dumber and dumber the
Yes.
more time went on.
this is true. This is actually very true.
Flanderization is a hell of a beast.
So, if I just kind of ignore our password check for just a moment, echo JSON encode statement fetch all. Mode is PDO a sock. 2 colons. PDO, sorry, fetch a sock. There we go. Yes. So again, this is just to prove a point, right? There we go. Our neat little SQL injection attack does return into PHP the entire contents of this database. Now, yes? Question?
Could this lead to someone first doing an XSS? If they succeed, they do an SQL injection to get the information from the injection through the XSS?
Oh, most certainly. Because you don't have, like, okay. Okay, alright. It depends on the system you're using. Some systems will allow you to execute multiple SQL queries at once. If that's the case, you just put, for example, let's have some fun.
Oh wait, you can get the echo from the packet. Never mind.
Here, here's my thing. Here it is. Back. So let's try, instead, insert into credentials, username, password, values,
Single quote.
okay? Yeah, single quotes, yeah. Oh, yeah, single quotes should be fine. Sneaky man. Password is sneaky pass. There we go. Let's see if that executes. Whoop. All right. Let's take a look.
So we can just say less than one. Oh wait, it's big, then, sorry, less than one, yeah, yeah. And that's the.
Aha!
Oh god.
Oh look, it's an unhashed password in my password database.
How did I even get that? Who knows?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So
Sir, Halloween was like 2 weeks ago.
yes. But we're doing very nasty things.
Yes.
So we have to make nasty laughing sounds. So let me just show you guys what I did there. All right. By the way, I am not putting this version up on CS Unix. So the string that I entered included an additional SQL command: insert into credentials, username, password, values, sneaky man, sneaky pass. This was not a hashed password. This is just, it's, we've managed to insert data into our database. So if I can do that,
Drop tables, drop tables, drop tables.
I'm not going to drop the table
Aww.
because it takes time to set it up. But you can also drop the table.
Oh god.
You can absolutely drop it. Why wouldn't you be able to drop the table?
I just
Right?
want, please, Johnny, drop table.
But here's the thing, right?
Yes.
This is just a credentials database, right?
Oh.
Imagine if you will, right? A world, the horizontal becomes the vertical. No. Imagine we had something like Instagram, right? With something like images, which are stored in the database, right? Now, if the way that the images are usually stored is not like the image itself as like a blob. Normally it's a link to an image server that's elsewhere, so you have like servers upon servers upon servers, right? So the Instagram post will link to some directory where all the images are stored. So you could make it link somewhere else, and then you could have everybody on Instagram just has all images as or some other nefarious thing. Yes.
What did you input again to get this?
Let me show you.
Sir, could you have every single password be changed to a single password?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you've got the ability to.
Update
Okay.
where 1 equals 1.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah. Update
Password
where.
equals
So then at that point.
get trolled.
Yes. Get pwned. Yeah. Sorry. Here, I'll copy that somewhere you can see it.
And if someone's got an admin password.
There you go. That's the actual attack. Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, whose credentials are they jacking to do this? Yeah,
Yeah.
You need to be.
because it's your credentials being used in the PHP to access the database. So the hacker has the same level of credentials that you do. The developer.
You just said
Yeah. So that's how an SQL injection attack works. So here's the reason why PHP is responsible for this. It's because this is your natural solution to many, many string-related problems in PHP. This is what you naturally use. This is even what PHP wants you to use as a language, right? It wants you to put the variable name directly in the string as a form of concatenation. It's so easy. It's so easy to do, right? But we've seen the results. I actually didn't realize that the PDO execute allows you to execute multiple things. That's fascinating, actually, because The equivalent one in Python doesn't. It restricts you from executing only one statement at a time so that the user can't, like, you know, just insert a little drop tables in there on you.
Could you open the thing back up?
Yeah, sure. Which one? This one?
So
Yeah.
you would be able to also just continue after that, continue writing code?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can enter as many commands as you want. Right? Basically, at this point, what's restricting you is the size of a post parameter.
Is that the same thing on Mohawk's website?
Are you asking me if Mohawk's website is vulnerable to SQL injection attack?
No.
I haven't checked.
Why do
For
you
legal
I assume
reasons,
not.
For legal reasons, I have to say I haven't checked.
Sir, I'm asking for a friend.
You're asking for a friend?
Yes.
No, I haven't checked actually.
Okay.
Actually, although after we did the thing on XSS attacks, I checked my dad's church's website to see if it was vulnerable to XSS attacks, and turns out no, because at no point does he take any user input whatsoever aside from button clicks. Yeah, so
Why do you need the 2 dashes at the end?
it comments out the rest of whatever the original query was.
So mean.
It just nullifies it. The
Yup.
entire query defeated by 2 dashes.
He wants to write that code.
Yes, not only that, right?
Yes.
If the developer, if the target had written multiple SQL statements to be executed in their own PHP, they're all gone. I reject your SQL and I substitute my own.
That's so mean.
Yeah, no, it's sneaky, right? It's very sneaky.
Funny.
Yeah. Question.
Sorry, just to bring you back, the password hash stuff,
Oh yeah.
is it possible for someone to create their own? Or would you say, is it wise to create your own or use the one that's in PHP already?
Yeah, there's really nothing preventing you from making your own hashing algorithm if you want to. I would think that would be an extremely good learning exercise. In fact, you'd learn a certain amount about obviously you need to write a hash function, right?
I
And
created a salting function, just to implement the hash, that's, just thinking about that.
There's nothing in there. There's nothing in the hashing and salting routine that's outside of your abilities. Assuming you're doing well in your programming courses. It's not beyond your ability. Hashing functions are not too difficult to write, right? Now, writing a cryptographically secure one might be a little bit more difficult, right? But, PHP has that function to get random bytes, which is cryptographically secure, right? It's absolutely possible to write your own. The issue is, right, you probably wouldn't want to implement that for a production, for a job you'd use the passwords. You'd use the PHP stuff just for a maintainability standpoint, your scripts, if somebody, you got kind of a double-edged sword going on, right? If you've written your own scripts, if someone finds an exploit in PHP's, you are invulnerable, right? And there is actually a certain amount of security in that, because we're kind of to the point where it's assumed everybody will use PHP's own implementations of things for most things, right? So it would take someone a little bit to figure out that you had written your own salting and hashing algorithm and that it works maybe slightly differently from PHP's. Once they figured it out, if someone was trying to crack you, they'd probably be able to do so more easily than PHP's, PHP's own algorithm. But like, there is a layer of security through obscurity there, which,
And again, I guess if you're creating your own, you're just mostly just gonna be using like random, like you said, random string or random bytes.
yeah,
And it's not gonna be, what do you call it? It's not gonna be constant. So
Yeah.
that'll be another issue, I guess.
yeah. Yeah, and you're also now responsible for maintaining it.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Have we learned about as much as we could possibly learn? Do you want to see the drop tables attack? I'm not going to execute it, but do you want to see the drop tables attack? I'm not going to execute it. Not going to do it.
Let the intrusive thoughts win.
Actually, you know what? I might as well actually, because every time I come, the database has been wiped anyway. Because here's a reason to hate like the cloud server that all the programs are coming from. The XAMPP that I'm getting off of the cloud server doesn't come with the required database. That's why I have to remake it every class. So actually, I might as well drop the table.
Sir,
Could you
Yes.
imagine that the reason it doesn't have the database is because someone started doing the drop tables, and everyone ever since just assumes that the thing dumps them automatically. But you're just doing it out of spite, all of you teachers who are teaching PHP.
Okay, are you guys ready for this?
Yeah.
This is the famous drop tables attack. All right,
You have to Johnny us instead of Magic.
Johnny. Oh yeah, Johnny Tables. Yeah.
It's required.
Okay, so we have Johnny or 1 = 1 drop table credentials. Are you ready?
Hold on to your butts.
Okay, so this is deceptive, right?
Yeah.
Because the fetch was executed before the drop. If we take a look at the database, what database?
What database?
what are you talking about?
No table.
one.
The table has been destroyed. So yeah, drop tables actually works. Yeah,
There was a branch in the timeline, needed to be cleared.
yes.
My lawyer has recommended me not to not to suggest doing this.
What's this? There's nothing.
I mean, you saw how many layers of security I had to disable to be able to do this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
no way you accidentally do that.
Yeah, basically, the point of this is, okay, I will tell you what the point of this entire thing was, and then you can go, all right? If you think in this class that you will be able to work a job based on the first 2 or 3 weeks of class that you took in this class, you're wrong. Going directly to the super globals isn't safe, right? Going directly, using string splicing to splice together SQL queries, bad idea, right? And as we pointed out in class, if we can add an entry to the table, we can update entries in the table, which means we can inject SSX. There we go. That combination of characters, you can insert things into database information that redirects people to malicious sites, right? You can contaminate the database. You don't have to destroy it. You can contaminate it, and that could be much more destructive. And yeah, you can just do everything that's Like that's what you leave yourself vulnerable to. But that only worked because I basically bypassed 3 layers of security, right? I bypassed the security on the incoming post data. I bypassed the security protecting from SQL injection attacks themselves, right, by not using the PDO object correctly, right? And then I trusted what was coming out of the database, right? If an XSS attack had been injected into the database, in that algorithm, in that PHP script, I'm not filtering anything coming out of the database.
When you inserted the new username, the username could have been, instead of Johnson, like sneaky, or I don't remember what you put.
I called him Sneaky Man.
Sneaky Man, instead
Yeah.
of Sneaky Man, it would have been like arrow, script, arrow, hello there, like console.log.
Precisely so.
Or
Well, I mean,
alert.
this is kind of a stupid example, because like, under no circumstances would you ever belch forth the entire contents of the credential.
I mean,
You would never
yeah.
do this, but like, to the extent that this was done, if any of those fields contained an XSS attack, I'd also be done that way.
I don't think you would belch the contents of the user, but
You probably wouldn't. But the username itself is often displayed,
yes, and that's enough.
right? That would be enough. But though I wouldn't necessarily put the SQL injection attack in the username then. I'd have the username as an XSS attack and the password as but anyway. I mean, username as an XSS attack is pretty easy to pick out in the database if you're actually looking at it.
Oh, of course.
But
If you committed the mistake of allowing the XSS to go through, you're going to commit the mistake of allowing it to go from the database.
precisely. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you next week. I promise I will have your tests marked. Yeah.
As long as you don't use the corrupt data, you're fine.
So like if you have negative, you have positive, you have.
Rename this by login.
Oh, you have?
And security.
Thanks.
It's not even not secure, it's the opposite of secure.
You're fine.
You're fine.
They don't look like they broke.
Yes.
They didn't break. Thanks, Ryan. You're the best. I also
You have
Worship him on a daily basis.
Don't tell him that. He doesn't know I have an altar yet. Well,
What?
Racy, you've been recorded.
You've been recorded.
So,
Oh no.
I think I turned it off, didn't I?
Yes. Hey, sir, so you know what?
No, sir. It's still recording me.
Is it? Okay.
Hello, people. I know you never stopped because you never came this direction.